Hey guys, welcome to another video. So this week I'm doing something slightly different than a question that I normally do on a Monday. I'm going to be looking at this book. This is called Magic Realms, as you can see, The Art of Fighting Fantasy by Ian Livingstone, the author of the Fighting Fantasy books, along with Steve Jackson and Jonathan Green, who is like the chronicler of the history of Fighting Fantasy, but also a fiction writer. He's done lots of game books as well. So this book I picked up at the Fighting Fantasy Fest last year. It's a thick tome, as you can see there, and it is full to brim of amazing, awesome, inspiring art. Now, it's quite a big book and it's quite heavy, but other than that, there aren't any cons. So let's have a look. So, of course, I got Ian to sign the book to Toby. Art is Magic. Ian Livingstone. And you can see through the contents here that it has there are lots of artists in this book. Now, what I've decided to do is pick out 4 or 5 artists, and we can have a look at those and just have a little discussion. Maybe a trip down memory lane, as well as talk about inspiration and technique. I'm an artist, so on some level I feel like I might be able to provide some sort of insight. Here we go. So there's a foreword by Ian Livingstone. He talks about the foundation and how they started to commission more artists. It of course mentions Russ Nicholson, but for me he doesn't give him enough prominence. And I think his preferred artist was Iain McCaig, and he did a lot of books. But for me, and we'll talk about Russ later, he was the one that captured people's imagination with the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. He's the one that got people into it. If they'd had a naff artist with that book, it wouldn't have worked. This whole thing wouldn't exist. And for me, Russ deserves more appreciation. Right, so there's my little rant over. It's definitely some interesting stuff going on here. Jonathan Green gives his own little intro there as well. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of artists here. The first one being John Blanche. Now, he, as it says here, world-renowned artist, known for establishing the art style of the Warhammer universes, and Steve Jackson's epic sorcery. So his sorcery game books, which was a set of game books for adults, if you like, a step up from Fighting Fantasy. And John Blanche's artwork seemed to fit that desire, that just something a bit more grim. And you can see here, this is these are the covers for, along with this one here, the sorcery books. And there is something kind of old world, fey, mystical about John Blanche's style. There is an intensity to the image, and they're kind of peculiar and strange. And you just look at them and you're trying to figure out what they are. They are just fantastical, which is what I love about these particular works. Now you can see these are his illustrations. Now when you take the colour out of it, what you're kind of left with is recognition that his work is all about penmanship. It's all about mark making. So he uses stippling, he uses intense marks, creating textures and fields of texture within the picture, and he fluctuates the frequency of those to create depth within the illustration, which is one of his key styles. He uses heavy outline sometimes as well, which is again a kind of a sense that this is very much about the illustration rather than the paint, which he often applies in washes of acrylic or watercolor. They are very, very detailed, and I can imagine that many of these pictures took a long time to draw, and considering that they were on a very tight schedule when they were doing these for the Fighting Fantasy books, it's quite incredible. You must have been up very late on very many occasions. This is a series of small illustrations. These are interesting to see, but he did one of the first maps as well for, and this was for sorcery, as you can see up the top here, and you get a sense of the land here. That is quite something. It's more of a kind of an illustration than a map, isn't it? That one really. Okay, let's have a look at another artist. I mean, let's bear in mind John Blanche set the trend for Warhammer, as well as he did lots of White Dwarf work. He worked with Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone on many projects, and in fact he worked for Games Workshop until 2023 when he retired, and I think he's still doing work now. He's a character, and that comes through in his work, so that is a fantastic thing. Now you're probably wondering why you're not looking at some of these other artists here. Well, I don't want to ruin the whole book for a start. There's some really interesting things to discover in here. So you can get your hands on this book yourself and have a good look. There are so many great. Alan Langford. I won't hang on Alan Langford, but he does Fighting Fantasy Fest, and he talks about his influences. He was very much influenced by early comics, adventure comics. And he did lots of sort of war illustrations as well. He did Island of the Lizard King. The next artist we're going to really pause on is Iain McCaig. Ian Livingstone's favourite artist, I feel. Now, I think that's partly because he did quite a lot of the books, but he did some iconic covers that have hung around. And this one being the key one being the Forest of Doom here. So this is probably one of the most iconic covers in the Fighting Fantasy series, and it's something that inspired other covers. So, for example, the City of Thieves has a very similar cover. Let's see if we can get that one here. Where's that one here? There. With and I forget the character's name. But this is the design that was then used for Darth Maul, for the Phantom Menace. And Iain McCaig went on and did many other. Harry Potter he worked on, I believe, as well. So he clearly demonstrated a penchant for designing characters. And you see it, look at his art here. It's fantastic. And probably one of his iconic styles is this high contrast artwork that he did, using really sharp shadows and really making those characters pop. He's not afraid to really get in there and create that dark space. And this is Death Trap Dungeon, so it's kind of suited that style really well. So it's obviously going to be dark down in the dungeon, and you can see how that really came through. And his iconic Death Trap Dungeon cover with that many-eyed beast on the front. Very iconic. In fact, Death Trap Dungeon is one of those books that people keep coming back to, and there at the Fighting Fantasy Fest, there's often people playing that one that you can watch people playing the Death Trap Dungeon. I like his work, but for me, it doesn't quite meet the standard of Russ Nicholson. That's my own personal opinion, obviously. Let's move on to the next artist. So the next one is Ian Miller. Now, Ian Miller didn't do a huge amount of Fighting Fantasy work, but he has done this incredible House of Hell cover, which is just still so beautiful. I mean, he spent many years at college studying his art and became part of that grim, dark wave of artists that included John Blanche, as I was talking about earlier on. And he's about pen work, and then he applies washes of colour over the pen work. And you can see it's all about the line. The colour it doesn't really matter so much about the colour, but it's all about this intense darkness that he works into his forms. And the Creature of Havoc is also another classic cover that you can see there. That's one of his works. And this style, it's kind of wild, it's kind of got some body shock going on there as well, body horror. And these kind of little filler art as well that he used to do, they're quite popular, and you see those in Warhammer and a whole range of other Games Workshop products. And let's not forget, Final Fantasy was Games Workshop because Steve Jackson and Livingstone, so it was very much about them. The artists would work in for both areas, both fields. I think that he's such an important artist because of his style. So we're going to skip over Russ Nicholson. We'll come back to Russ in a sec. We'll look at an interesting case for Gary Ward and Edward Crosby. Now, these two did one book, which was Caverns of the Snow Witch, which was published in 1986. Now, it's the only situation, the only case where two artists worked on the illustrations for a book. All the other books, they're individual artists. But these two worked together. And one, which was... so they would... Gary Ward would pencil the artwork, and then we had a mutual interest in fantasy art. Gary was doing illustration for White Dwarf Fantasy, which I helped with. This work led to him meeting Livingstone and offered Caverns. Once Gary accepted a job, he asked me to join him as co-illustrator. All the originals were A3 size, and you can understand that they look so detailed, being reduced down. Though some of the preliminary drawings were much larger. This was scaled down. We worked out roughs for each illustration, had someone pose for the photo reference that locked the overall pose and angle of the figures in place. Then Edward and I worked on the agreed illustrations at separate locations. I just think this is so interesting, explains Ward. Edward then delivered the final pencil drawings once a week or so. I tended to work on more human characters. Edward's style suited the goblins. I inked them all to keep a consistent style. So it was Gary Ward that came up with this inking style, and I think it's genius. I just love this heavy contrast but yet intense line work that he went over with these illustrations. I just think they're so cool, and they're designed on a kind of medieval woodblock style. They purposely created this style based upon the genre of the books, thinking about the sort of Tolkien-esque style, and you know, these I just think these are such fabulous pictures. So get into that Caverns of the Snow Witch and just have a look at some of these illustrations. And then the final artist I want to have a look at from this just astounding book is Russ Nicholson. No surprise to any of you who know that I'm a massive fan of Russ Nicholson. And Russ Nicholson passed away in 2023, which is very sad. I was very lucky to have met him a couple of times, and we had quite a lengthy chat on one of those occasions. Such a humble man. He was a little chap, little Scottish guy, and he was always just so humble. He never bigged himself up. In fact, there's a quote here. When he was selected to illustrate The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, he says, "My work just happened to marry well with fighting fantasy." Just happened to marry well. It's one of these things. He's not recognizing that Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson picked him because his work is amazing. And of course they're going to want an amazing artist to do their first book. And as I was saying at the top of the video, people got into Fighty because of Russ Nicholson. The first book, The Walk of Fighter Mountain, is much of it is good writing, but yet there's a lot of dull writing in it. Just go east, go west, that type of thing. With the image, you were waiting for the next image, the next creature that you were going to encounter. And that was brought to life by Russ. And let's not forget, he was a great designer of characters. You know, he designed the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, Zargor. You know, he came up with this look, you know, which is now iconic. There's only a little bit of text about him in here, and it's kind of sad that he isn't given a little bit more. But what can we say about his work? On some levels, it was a bit controversial. The ghoul image of the melting flesh, that really got people's attention, and there were lots of complaints about this particular image. But aside from that, no one draws water or smoke or the sinew of muscles quite like Russ Nicholson. There was a freedom to his line work, yet an intensity. I mean, look at the lines on this particular picture here. It's just how he could take his line work and just meander it through a subject, and that became flesh and bone. Or you look at these walls here behind this Minotaur. They're just a few lines, but it's stone. You know it is. He understood how line work created texture and element. It was just this natural ability. Such a modest man as well. When I was talking to him, it's almost as if he was detached from how important and how amazing these pieces of art were. It's just such a privilege. I think that his early work is particularly good. As he gets more mainstream, I think he attempts to intensify the images a little bit. Maybe he just had more time. Maybe he was being paid more money, because I know that he was trying to churn out pictures for Warlock in days, in like a day, one a day. It's like ridiculous times that they were churning these images out. So just fantastic work. Very inspiring. So what can I say? Get your hands on this book. It is just magnificent. It takes me back to being a 10-year-old, seeing these images, those images drawing me into the fantasy worlds, and then look where I am now, creating my own games, and just bathing in the nostalgia of these awesome pictures. Because these were done with ink, and the artists that did them, the ones I picked out, they had a journey through the medium. They played around with paints, different types of paints, different inks, and you can see how they perfected those skills. It just really comes through. So guys, I hope you found that inspiring today. Just think back to when you were younger. Think about the artworks that inspired you to enter these worlds. They're so important. So guys, if you found it interesting, click the thumbs up. If you're not subbed already and you want notifications for when these videos go live, just subscribe and click the bell, and then you'll get a notification, which is half the hassle, isn't it, really? And then if you've got any comments, if you'd like to tell me your favourite artists down below, your favourite fighting fantasy artists in the comment section, please do. That would be awesome. And then if you've got any questions you want me to cover or books you want me to look at, then just let me know again in the comment section. But otherwise, guys, take care, and I'll see you very soon.